really, I'm real grateful and honored to introduce. I'd like to introduce Tim H.
Hi everybody, I'm Tim. I'm an alcoholic and an addict. Hi. It's a real honor for me also to be here tonight and share the sobriety that we all have with each other. And particularly I'd like to tell you my effect and my perception of my good friend and sponsor, Frank B, excuse me. I got to keep protocol here. And Frank dates all the way back at least to the 40s with our family. My dad was drinking in the 40s and many other times, many other decades, but I mean, in this particular time, my mom happened to see a particular article in the Chronicle or some paper that said, it was headlined, "I can spot a phony anytime." And of course, it was about Frank. And she cut it out. And she never told Dad that she had done this, but she knew that she had a person that had a problem, on her hands and all of our hands. And she just wanted to keep that for further reference and resources, they say. And I think at that time, Mom and Dad did go down, however, to see Frank in the early 40s or in the late 40s. And I remember that that time that, the seed, I just put it like this, the seed was planted. And the real seed that I know from my feeling with Frank, and I know my own dad, was basically that of authenticity. That when a person like myself or my dad had felt and met Frank, we all felt, I have always felt, and I know my dad did, that here was a person that talked like he walked and walked like he talked. If he was nervous, he said he was nervous. He didn't cover it up with psychobabble of live just for today. I mean, that's okay to hear those words, but only if they're basically being told to us in a sense of how we might live when we're nervous, a day at a time, a minute at a time. But Frank was able to just say it, whatever it was that he was going through. And I love that. I had been in the brotherhood, the priesthood, where there were people that were involved constantly with, at times, babble, religious babble, and they didn't mean to, but they had to, I guess, in their own perception, that they had to feel that they had to be a certain way. And I was more oriented, and I think my family was too. My mother was from Ireland with a lot of maniacs, brothers and sisters, and my dad came from a father that was a bigamist and all kinds of, that was into a lot of seedy stuff, so much stuff that we don't even know about it. That's how good it was. So, I mean, so these are the kinds of, that's the kind of family that we had, and only a person like Frank, in my opinion, could have had such an affect or an effect on our whole family because of his realness and his authenticity and his care, one time, I was on drugs. The thing that got me I was a drinker, but also the thing that got me here real fast was drugs. And I went down to the 7 Seas one time, and I had a whole vial of shit. I don't know what the fuck they were, but this nurse, she was a contact with different connections beside the hospital, and she gave me this vial of stuff, and I didn't know what they were, except I was getting different effects from it. And Frank said, "Geez, you look different today, Tim." That was his way of, he was his Irish Columbo way of dealing with me, And I says, "Yeah, Frank," and so I says, "Well, I might as well give up the ghost here because I know he sees it." And I give him this vial of hallucinogenics and speed and all kinds of horse shit. And we ended up trying to flush it down the toilet. This was our ritual. We tried to flush it, and every time we pulled the shitter, it would go down and pop up again. That's how good this was, Boom, 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 boom. I said, "Oh," we're going like this. And so finally, we just scooped all the shit out, and we put it on the floor, on the bathroom floor, and we smashed it. So that was my ritual at that time. And since then, I haven't had any drugs or alcohol, and that's, like I say, 20 years and 4 months ago, down at the 7 Seas. But that's the kind of things that the real things that we were able to do that had such an effect on me down at the. And I was not in the 7 Seas. Frank had basically advised against that because I had a job and I was working, but I had I was an enigma to myself. I had come from a religious background. I had a lot of sense of street in me because I had done a lot of different things from the street, and I had boxed, and yet I was supposed to be a good guy. I didn't know who the fuck I was, So Frank says, "Oh no, keep on doing what you're doing and just do." So that helped me quite a bit. And we went on this 12-step call one time where there were 32 birds that we went over there. These couple had helped Frank for 6 or 7 years, helped people down at the Seven Seas, and had shaved them, and they were sober, I guess, 5 and 6 years at the time, and they went on a spin. So they called Frank up. They wanted to talk to him, wanted to have a nice chat, let them know that they were doing the right thing, even though they were drinking. Well, anyway, we went over there to the place. It was some place up around Sacramento on Drum or someplace, and it was a beautiful apartment, but as soon as we walked in, there was all these birds around. They were out of the cage. They were out of the cage, and they're flying around, and I said, what the shit's happening, Frankie? And the guy says, they're having freedom. They have their freedom. So they were talking, how, I was ducking the birds, it's like reminding me of that movie, The Birds, and I felt like I was in that movie at times, but Frank said, relax. So I didn't, but I was able to see what went on, and what went on there was the actual digression of what happens to me when people get loaded, and at first they were talking real nice, how much they loved each other, and these beautiful birds flying around, and there's bird shit, and whatever they said they loved, and then what happened is, as soon as she would leave, because there was a Chinese guy that had this grocery store that was bringing up whatever he was bringing up, he'd go in, it was probably the booze, he said, she's a bitch. They just talked about how beautiful they were and how they loved each other. As soon as she left the room, she's a bitch. She don't know how to drink, and she snitches me off, and blah, blah, blah. And then, boom, she came back, and she sat down with him. And then he went out. He went out to get his Mickey, whatever he's doing to fill up, and he's an asshole, Frank. Fucking asshole. Fucking, he's like worse than that fucking bird over there. That bird is fighting with Charlie, the other bird. So, they had those kinds of conversations, and they were talented. One was an opera singer, and the other person was a writer. In fact, he was doing a lot of writing even in his drinking. And but it just showed me then that it didn't matter what strata of society a person came from. It didn't matter where they perceived themselves to be. What mattered was the actual fact that they were drunk, fucked up, and there was no, booze and drugs has no prejudice, takes no prisoners. And it was really good, really early on for me to see that and feel that. And I think it was because of that early groundwork that I was at 22 and 23 years of age able to be affected to feel like, wow, this is real. I don't have to have all kinds of people around or different kinds of people. All I have to do is just keep coming to meetings. And one of the first things, and of course, that Frank had said, no matter how you feel, come to meetings. You feel down, come to meetings. You feel up, come to meetings. You feel in between, come to meetings. You feel totally competent, come to meetings. So I've been coming to meetings ever since, and it has had a tremendous effect on me because it didn't matter what my mindset was, how good I thought I was, how bad I thought I was, no matter what. I just knew that it was okay for me to be here with you and talk about that sense of shame, embarrassment, inadequacy that we all have either felt, have gone through, and sometimes go through in later sobriety. Because we haven't dealt with it. We don't have the goods. We don't have the wherewithal to deal with certain things in the initial sobriety. And so I think that because of that, and because of that type of guts that Frank showed me, especially his dealing with certain alkies that he knew that were for real, that is the thing that I want you to know, Frank, that has always touched me the most. There'd be a wino that would come along, Frank, can I have a buck? Fuck you, drop dead, hit the, that would be one, because this asshole might have been a phony. It was a guy that would work people, and then he would hammer them on the head when nobody was looking. And Frank knew those guys, and then there would be some guy that nobody noticed, and he'd walk up and he'd give him a buck, or whatever he'd give him. And that always impressed me, the ability for Frank to know that, and that it gave me a way to deal with people that are on the streets today that are asking for money, which are quite a few now in San Francisco. So I just want you to know, and plus it would help me to keep my sense of humor, because there were so many funny things that were happening down in the place that Frank ran for 25 years, the Seven Seas. It gave me a real sense of lightness that, hey, this is fun. And to my opinion, in fact, this is the big thing that's really in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. It insists that we enjoy life today. Not that we become a saint, not that we become a hero or a martyr, because we were shit. Well, all of us were that. That's what we were out there. We could never get found out being non-ordinary, Christ, we didn't even think we were ordinary, so we had to go for the stars, Frank took all that stardom shit out of it and said, geez, you can have fun. You can have fun just relating and being with each other. So basically, I want my real purpose in, feeling tonight, beside for myself being here in sobriety, is to let you know that I'm from the Brennan School of Thinking, basically, and And I really, really say that with great pride and dignity, because I feel with that I can be with people no matter where or what walk they have or what feeling they have about themselves, because I saw it personified so much in my whole family. My father, my mother, who's now dead, my brothers and my sisters we have all ran across paths with each other from time to time. With that, I'd like to introduce you, Frank.
My name is Frank. I'm an alcoholic. I was told by Jerry back there not to talk for 1 minute, but stay here for at least 2 minutes. Well, I'm not going to run away. I'm going to talk. If I think I'm talking too much, I'll just say, "Dumb me up now. Shut up." But first of all, I want to thank Abel for asking me down here, and my friend Jerry, my friend Tim here, and all my friends here. I think when you're around a while, you learn to identify with each other as human beings, and you learn how to relate to each other and how to become more real and more yourself. When I came into this organization, 1946, there was only 50 people in the whole San Francisco. There was only 2 people in Palo Alto, 1 person in Belmont, 2 people in Mill Valley, and so on and so forth. But only 50 people in San Francisco. And half of those guys were drunk, And the other half were pissed off because they couldn't drink anymore. And then you had your power guys. I'm going to run it this way. If you don't do it my way, fuck you, drop dead. Then that group would fall apart, see? It took years and years and years to where people become reasonably sane, reasonably stable, because like us all, a little flighty, a little bit weird, a little bit nervous, and alcoholics, they said, "Now you got to understand me, but I don't have to understand you. But you better understand me, You better do it my way, or else you're going to go to hell, All that double talk, I'm glad to see everybody here tonight, and anybody who's new here, I'm glad to see you here, because each person here is like a fresh shot in the arm where you give each other energy, healthy, positive energy. And we all need that. After 43 years, I need as much today as I did when I first came in. So it's important for me to thank everybody here, because you're giving me, as I'm talking here now, I'm getting energy from you, and I'm giving a sense of purpose, a sense of renewal. And I just want to say that because it affects me that way, and I'm glad I'm able to feel. When I was drunk, I couldn't feel anything, I didn't care. But now that I've been sober a while, I'm going to say this right up front. I'm physically sober 43 years, but that doesn't make me mentally and emotionally sober 43 years. I think it's a long process. Alcoholism is a negative process down, and recovery is an ongoing positive process up, you see. And these meetings allows you and I the opportunity to get with it, to become more human, and to become more reasonably sane. That's why the steps of AA are equally important, no less or no important, because each one has a direct connection, one with the other. And then we share each other on a one-to-one level, and we share each other on a group level. But the fact is, we can talk to each other, we can talk with each other instead of down or at each other. That's why these meetings are very important, because they help to connect and give you and I a chance to like ourselves and to build our self-esteem and our self-respect. When I came into AA, I had no respect, I had no self-esteem, and I didn't care. I came here from New York on a ship during the 1934 strike. I was on what they call a goon squad. My job was to dump all finks. You know what a fink is? Okay. I won't say it because you probably know what it is. I don't have to go into a long story there. Okay. So I came here during a very violent times where you had to hit first and talk later. There's no negotiations or arbitration. course, now we use these fancy words and arbitrate, negotiate, and all that bullshit, you know. And the question is, what am I doing here talking to you tonight? I'm here for two reasons. One, to stay sober. Number two, to stay reasonably sane, and hope I can help you and help myself. Because when I'm up here, I'm also helping myself, and I hope I can help people in this room tonight. I was born and raised in a place called Syracuse, New York. I was in an orphan home for 12 years. I had polio from the time I was 1 till I was 2 years old, and I was very, very fortunate to not have. And those who didn't die are crippled today. And when my sponsor told me, he said, "Now, I want you to get sober, but I want you to keep your sobriety by doing two things. Volunteer at the 19th Avenue, the Shriners Hospital, and see how those kids are like you were when you were born, so that you don't develop any self-pity or martyr syndrome." We call it a martyr syndrome, because most alcoholics, they always feel nobody appreciates me, nobody likes me. What am I doing here? You know, what am I doing here? So for 5 years, I volunteered out there, and that was very important for me because it gave me a chance to come to terms with myself, and furthermore, to come to terms with me on life's terms. And he told me a lot of things there. I'll just point out several things he told me. One was you have to learn to become teachable, and then number two, to become reteachable, and then third, learn how to apply the lessons learned from all your mistakes. You can take a mistake and put it to a positive use by turning the energy around and also changing the emphasis. Then something negative doesn't remain negative unless you, by choice, make it and keep it negative. That's why these steps of AA are very positive. They all have a very special message. The first step means my life wasn't manageable, but even today sometimes my life is just as unmanageable today as it was when I was drinking. But there's one difference. At least I know when I'm out of control, when I'm not doing very well. I can go to somebody and talk to. I go to Tim here. I go to a lot of people here. I go to his father. I go to a lot of people when I'm out of control, because I need to be told, listen, you're wrong, you're out of control, you're out of balance. Let me tell you something. I have to listen. I have to listen, and I got to re-listen, because nobody's got it made. There's no graduates in AA. Nobody in this room graduates. You know, you go from phase to phase, level to level, dimension to dimension, but you don't graduate. You don't get a diploma. You know, we used to call shithouse philosophers down at the waterfront. They were self-appointed gurus, whatever that fucking word means, you know. They were all experts, but they all ended up in jail. I used to go down and see Tim when he was the sheriff down at the city jail here, and also the hospital. And all these experts are all in jail and black eyes, and they can quote the fucking book here, but they couldn't stay sober. See, they were the self-appointed gurus, full of shit, you know. So much for that. Okay. I had to learn to shut up. I had to learn to keep my opinions to myself. I had to learn to keep my ideas. If I'm going to criticize somebody, make sure I can criticize them with some valid reasons. But even then, I had to be careful how I criticize, because sometimes you go on false assumptions, and pretty soon you're more wrong, or you're more stupid than the people you're calling stupid, you know. And that's how it went. And sometimes that's how it still goes today. I have a son who's now 32 years old. I have 2 sons in China. This is my American-born son here. He always tells me, sometimes you sound okay, but you're full of shit sometimes. You know why? You contradict yourself. You say one thing, but you do the opposite. In other words, you're a hypocrite, you know. So listen to your kids. There's a special message here. Listen to your kid, because all kids are not dumb, you know. They have feelings, and they get hurt when fathers ignore them, when mothers ignore them, or they're always being criticized or put down. That doesn't do your kids any good, because when you were a kid, when I was a kid, well, I didn't have any room. I had a bunch of 25 neurotic nuns for my so-called teachers. So I had no role models, so I used to just manufacture role models, you know. And all we did was share each other's neuroses. We're all stupid and sick, and so on and so forth. And so when you're trading and exchanging sicknesses and neuroses, you're not getting well. You're getting sick. You're staying sick. And but I felt sorry for those nuns, because a lot of those nuns were they were nice, they were human, but you could see that they didn't want to be nuns. They were just they were there because their father said, you're going to be a nun, you're going to be a priest, and all that bullshit, And you could see and feel that they were very frustrated, And the same way with those brothers, we had Christian brothers there too. They were all nuts too, They used to call our orphan home the Siberia of the Catholic Church. All the misfits, these poor priests who couldn't take care of their dioceses or their high schools, they'd send them to see us. And of course, we were misfits and abandoned, and so we felt right at home with each other, So we couldn't be embarrassed because we were both nuts, you see. But when you feel like you've been abandoned, you don't feel very good about yourself, because my mother and father, they were poor. My mother and father came from Ireland. My mother was a scrub lady, and my father was a locomotive engineer, but he also was a mixed up with Machine Gun Kelly and Al Capone, the rest of those guys. So he did a lot of time in Sing Sing. So he didn't have time for me and my brother and my sister. And so I was in there among other people who were not wanted by their parents, and people were born out of wedlock, and in those days that was a very bad thing to be born out of wedlock. You were a misfit, you were a cancer labeled a zero, So when you got those kids to deal with, and you got yourself to deal with, and you don't feel very good about yourself, it's hard to believe anybody. First of all, it's hard to trust anybody. It's even harder to trust yourself. And you develop some very deep resentments. You become very cynical. You become very you don't believe anybody, even though you may want to believe, but because where you find yourself, where I found myself, I didn't trust anybody. And it took me a long, long time, sober, to trust myself and to trust anybody I talked to. And that's why AA is a very powerful organization. And I think, to me, it takes a lot of guts and courage to stick with it. And I think over a period of time, you learn how to develop these qualities of admitting that you're wrong, that I'm wrong, and to admit that I could to correct myself. I don't have to stay disconnected. I don't have to stay sick by choice. Now, if I want to become a martyr by choice, I'm going to stay sick. And I'll be on the street again. When I detox on the street. I walked these streets for 72 days, and there was no detoxification in those days. I mean, no place to go, because alcoholism was considered a crime. You were a criminal when I came in. So there was no room for hospitals. They put you in jail. In fact, I was taken from the Navy hospital in Oak Knoll and put in jail because alcohol was not considered a disease. All you were is a fucking asshole, And so, if you're told you're an asshole long enough, you say, "Well, I'll be a big fucking asshole," I'll prove it. I'll be a super asshole, And so, of course, when you do that, you stay sick. You stay ignorant, and you stay sick, But you're the last guy I was the last guy to admit that I was sick, And you go through all kind of denials. I think the word denial is a very strange word, because not only was I doing things wrong drunk, but sometimes sober. I had to correct myself and take an inventory of what am I doing sober that's wrong? What am I doing that I'm short with people? Or what am I doing that I'm not having any sensitivity or understanding of other people? I want you to understand me, and I want you to be sensitive to not me, but I don't want to be sensitive and understand you. And that's a sickness in itself. Alcoholism is a series of sicknesses, mental, emotional, psychological, and so on. I know my sponsor told me years ago, he said, a drunk starts in the mind long before you take the first physical drink. The next drunk you're on is a dry, emotional drunk, and pretty soon the physical drunk takes place. And when you're irritable and you criticize this guy, you're not very good to your wife and your kids there, you're building up, you're setting yourself up for a drunk. I didn't know that until my sponsor told me. He said, you got to start learning how to back down. You got to start learning how to not hit first and talk later. I had a bad habit of hitting first and talk later. That's not a very good way to be. And so now I can listen to your bullshit thing, and I can say, okay, I'll say to your bullshit, what's your story? What's your real story? Because I had some guys on the waterfront that were, I'll give you a little example. I sold papers in New York, in the east side of New York. They call a little mafia, little Italy. And my job was how to be a liar. I was trained and paid to be a hustler and a liar. And I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what the mafia was. And I was the only Irish guy down there. The rest of the guys were Italians, And it took me 5 years later to find out who I was working for. If you was an honest cop, my job was to get rid of you fast. And if you were on the take, if you were a crooked cop, my job was to let you in, you see. But I didn't know what I was doing. I was just told. I get an envelope. I only made $1 a day. I made $10 a day for being a liar. Isn't it funny? For being a liar. Strange. Okay, so much for that. And then sometimes you become a liar later on because you're either trying to impress somebody, or you're scared to tell yourself who you really are. And that's why I say denial it comes in many forms and shapes and degrees. And I had a hell of a time believing in AA. I had a tough time believing there was a God greater than me or a power greater than myself. I didn't, because when I was a young kid in this orphan home, I was thrown off the altar. I was fired because I told a priest to go fuck himself, and you don't tell priests and nuns to do that, especially when you're a little kid, And so I was a rebel with a cause or not a cause, and I didn't fit in. In other words, I was one of these misfits type, I don't know whether you understand what a misfit is, a guy who didn't fit in, that's all. I didn't fit in. And I didn't buy anybody's philosophy. I didn't believe anybody. I didn't believe myself. And that arrogance, that pre-alcoholic arrogance, intensified when I drank. And even when I stopped drinking, I was just as arrogant, just as indifferent as I was when I drank. So I had to slow down. I had to take an inventory. And in fact, I didn't know what the word meant for a long time until my sponsor told me, you have two columns. One, your negative handicaps and your positive attributes, because most alcoholics either go from one extreme to the other. They're afraid or ashamed to say they got some good qualities. And I was one of those kind of guys. I was afraid and ashamed that I thought I was all bad. I didn't think I had any good qualities or any strength. Although I was a gang leader, I was a big football player and a boxer and karate, but I used to do that as an escape. I used to do that to hide my emotional insecurity. I used sports to hide in, because I was very inadequate and I felt alone. I didn't feel part of anything. And so sports gave me a chance to feel like I was part of something. That's why AA is very important, because you get a chance to rejoin the human race. You get a chance to rejoin as a human being with feelings. And people of my age, we're not supposed to feel or cry or show any kind of emotions. You're supposed to hide. You used to call us sissies then if you showed any kind of emotion. If you cried, you showed any kind of tears, you were labeled some kind of a weird idiot or a sissy, But I think now people are learning how to identify their real and actual feelings, and I think they're able to honestly feel and show their feelings. Like Tim said when he talked, if I feel bad today, I don't have to hide behind my false feelings, another denial. If I feel good today, I can say I feel good and mean it. If I feel indifferent, I feel indifferent. If I feel out of it, I feel out of it, So each one of the steps of AA gives you and I a chance to identify different parts of each other's, different parts of your character, your strength, your weaknesses, and so on. And also admitting that I was an alcoholic, also that my life was unmanageable, but also in present tense of the word, sometimes still equally unmanageable, cold, sober. And just because you're sober, dry, it doesn't make you an angel or a fucking saint, right? It means you're just a human being starting to realize who you really are and who you were not for years and years and years and years. And my sponsor told me help another drunk. Get out there and help somebody else who needs your help. Like Tim said there a while ago, I used to have these guys come to me, hey, Brendan, I need a jug. Okay, you're sick. Okay, you fucking asshole, you want to fight? Come here. But this guy is sick, so I would demonstrate to this other asshole, this guy is sick. He needs my help. Here's money. You come with me, asshole, you know. And then when this asshole got sick, I took care of him. They couldn't figure out my philosophy. I was always in in their mind, a state of contradiction, you know. But you learn who a phony is, and you learn what type of a phony is, because I was a phony. So you have to learn to say honestly that I was just as much of a phony as the person I was calling a phony. So that's one of the first steps of honesty, is how to be honest with yourself, and instead of criticizing and wimping. I had a group down there called the whiners and the whiners and the whiners, and now you're going to be the chief whiner, asshole. You're in charge of this fucking garbage can, and you take care of the shit house, and when you finish, report to me. Fuck you, Brennan. I'm going to go. Oh, you want to go out the street? Go back on the street then. Go back to the garbage can, you know. Oh, you mean, I said, you mean what you want to mean. In other words, you say to yourself, you're going to do exactly what you're going to do anyhow, because who says what, you know? Most alcoholics won't take anything, because we want you to say, you're a nice guy, you're a good guy, but most of the time, most guys like me didn't want to hear the truth, because the truth hurts, you know. I didn't want to hear anything honest, because I wasn't prepared to be honest. I wasn't prepared to accept any kind of responsibility. Oh, that's another thing my sponsor told me. He said, you have to learn to become responsive and responsible, and then hold yourself totally accountable for all your behaviors, your moods, your habits, your work habits, and your lack of consideration, your lack of concern, and all these things you had to learn to come to terms with. And each day you had to come to terms each day, because sometimes you get tired, sometimes you lose your courage, you lose your confidence, you lose a lot of things. Not just when I drank. I went through a lot of things cold sober. And one of the things I went through 2 years ago when my wife died was to examine my conduct. Did I treat my wife good? Did I treat my son? Am I treating my son okay now? Because you go through what they call a grievance process, where you have to examine either you loved your wife. In my case, did I meet her needs? Was I there when she needed me? Sometimes I was there physically, but I wasn't quite there all the way mentally and emotionally. And I had to examine that and re-examine that cold sober. But I had to take the responsibility of either not being there when she needed me, or I was there too much. Sometimes you can crowd people. You can crowd your wife and your sons and your kids. You get in their way because you're in your own way. That's one of the things A is teaching me, is how to get out of my own way, get off my own back, and get off your back. And particularly when you're dealing with your mother, your wife, in my case, I think recovery starts with each of us internally, and then how we treat our families. I can be a nice guy sitting up here, but take me to my house and you show a maniac, a wild fucking maniac, you know. So I had to learn to back down sober, you know, and not be so pushy, so arrogant, and so all the rest of the stuff that goes with it. And in this orphan home I was in, I used to have gangs. We didn't have nobody visit us, so we just had to make up our own rules, and I used to have these gangs going. And I was sort of a leader. I had 2 or 3 gangs going, and then when I got to New York, I did the same thing on the waterfront in New York. Then later on in the San Francisco waterfront, I was one of these kind of guys that wanted the social justice. I want to make sure things are okay. And if I thought you were being beat up or taken advantage of, I'd say, take me to the asshole, and I'll take care of the fucking asshole. You know, I was one of these guys who wanted to change the world and all that bullshit. Meantime, I was collapsing. I was going down, you know. So I spun my wheels. I used to waste my time and my energy. And I said, why am I so tired? Why am I so tired? And he said, well, you have to learn to identify different levels of your energy and learn how to utilize what you're learning. I can be sober 1,000 years, but if I don't utilize the lessons learned from being sober, what good is my sobriety? It's very false and very shallow, sometimes very empty. And it takes a long time to understand you don't have to stay stagnant sober. You don't have to stay worthless sober. You don't have to stay hopeless by choice. That's why that word choice is a very powerful word. It means it gives you and I the leniency to make different kinds of choices and to back those choices up with responsible action. Instead of reacting, respond. Respond in a responsible manner to where you're not ashamed of who you are, you're not ashamed of who you are, and you're glad to be who you are. You no longer have to be guilty or hold yourself in bondage. I think most alcoholics of my type kept myself a prisoner because I was afraid to speak up. I was afraid to do anything. For instance, it took me 10 years to get a degree from the University of California at Davis because I was afraid to get into a classroom. I was afraid to be embarrassed because I didn't know how to study. And my sponsor told me, get a dictionary and learn the basic, smallest words. Learn what each word means, learn all the connotations of words, then take a small sentence and put it together. So when I finally, after 4 years of non-credit courses, I finally started taking credit courses and finally got a degree. It took me 10 years to get a degree from the University of California. And I have other degrees after that, but the first degree was the hardest because I was afraid to go into a classroom. I couldn't study. My attention span was bad. My sense of continuity was bad, and my sense of receiving and absorbing something. I couldn't retain something accurately. That's why the word authenticity, I got that from Tim years ago. Be as authentic as you can. Be as real as you can. Starting off, be as honest as you can. Because the capabilities of being honest come slow. Like I had the last time I went before a judge, Judge Matthew Brady, he said, Brennan, you're not capable of being honest. Tell me a fucking lie, but make it an interesting lie, and get out of this court. See, that's kind of a guy, he knew me, but I knew myself, you know. And later on, I took care of him 25 years later. I had a chance to help him out 25 years later. But I took care of priests, lawyers, doctors, and I had them all down there, dishwashers, and you had the highbaloo, the social outcasts, so-called. Then you had the snob on Telegraph Hill and Knob Hill. Then you had the fucking snobs in 6th and Howard. And each one was full of shit because I'm special, I'm different. Then you had the guy at San Quentin, I'm a big bad guy, and I folks, and they're all full of shit because they're all in it. They're all trying to hide their insecurities, like I did. You know, anytime I got arrogant and all that bullshit there, I was hiding. I was scared shitless of myself. I was afraid to tell you I was scared. I put on this big, tough exterior and throw you away, intimidate you the way you couldn't examine me or look at me too close, you know, because I was running scared. And running scared is a very powerful part of the alcoholism itself. Alcoholism is a series of diseases all in one. It's a mental process, a mental, emotional thing, and of course your physical thing. When you get well, when you get sober, you learn how to get good health. Like I run every day. I run 4 miles a day, and I swim 2.5 miles every single day because I just turned 71, so I feel pretty good. When I used to run before, I used to run from people and run to somebody. But now, when I run for pure joy because I like to feel good. When I got sober, I made it a point to get in good shape and feel good by feeling good. You know, as simple as that. ABC, feel good, because you want to feel good. And so when I run with great joy, and there's no pain, and I learned self-discipline. I think the important thing in Alcoholics Anonymous is learning how to become self-disciplined, learning how to control and identify your extremes, your extreme moods, your extreme feelings and lack of feelings. If I want you to understand me, I have to make an honest attempt to understand you and to respect you and respect your feelings and understand what your lifestyles are instead of criticizing you. You know, and in this day and age, we have all kind of things going on, and we have to learn how to keep our opinions to ourselves. And if we do express an opinion, try to be as charitable and as honest as I can, instead of downgrading you and holding in prejudices I have. I had to learn how to not to feed into and on my built-in and acquired prejudices, and not to criticize you because you think differently, you feel differently, your lifestyle is differently, your philosophy is different. You're a human being, first of all. That's the most important thing. You are human beings, and we're all equal here. I'm no better than you are, and you're no better than I am. And it's hard to honestly develop an attitude that you can trust and believe and live with, you know. Thank you. Thank you. I forgot to tell you that the last drunk I was on, a 12-year-old kid kicked the piss out of me on the waterfront. And he took a news rack and hit me over the head with it. He said, "You fucking bum, get out of my way." And he knocked me right on my ass. And I said, "Well, what am I doing here?" I went from 192 pounds down to 128 pounds, and I had wine sores, and I looked like an old man at 27 years old, you know. I couldn't fight back. I wanted to fight, but I couldn't get up, you know. And he was right. I was a fucking slob and a bum, you know. I was a fucking wino, you know. But I would never tell anybody else, but they all knew. They all knew who I was and who I wasn't. So I just want to let you people know you don't have to go down all the way. Nobody in this room has to go down and get all those, what I call negative yets. You can have the opportunity to develop positive yets. You can get well, and you can enjoy getting well. Did I see a hand over there? That girl smiling there, next to that. Yeah, you. Yeah. You. Yeah, yeah. I want to close this meeting by reading to you on a subject called risk. Admiral Nimitz, who I served with from 1937 to 1945 in the Navy and the Marine Corps, he gave this to me many, many years ago. It's called risk. I'm saying this for several reasons. There's certain positive risk and negative risk, so I'm going to read it. Risk. To laugh is the risk appearing a fool. To weep is the risk appearing sentimental. To reach out for another is the risk involvement. To place your ideas, your dreams before a crowd is the risk they're lost. To love is the risk not being loved in return. To live is not the risk dying. To hope is the risk despair. To try is the risk failure. But risk must be taken because the greatest hazard in life is the risk nothing. The person who risks nothing, does nothing, has nothing, and is nothing. They may avoid suffering and sorrow, but they cannot learn, feel, change, grow, love, and live. Chained by their certitudes that they are a slave, they have forfeited their freedom. Only a person who risks is free. Thank you.